Well, hey, Grace Church, my name is Josh. Welcome to the weekly for the week of May 15th. Today we're talking about Jesus and the demoniac. So we started this sermon, I told you a story about a ship that was built in the 50s, and it was designed to be a warship for the United States military, and it never was put into battle. Like one time in the Cuban Missile Crisis, it was put on standby, but then ultimately it was turned into a luxury liner for prestigious Americans to take trips across the Pacific Ocean because it never served as a battleship, which is what was intended for. And we use that metaphor to talk about the church. And so when we look at the church, how do we view it? Is it a battleship where there's really spiritual battles happening, or is it a luxury liner that should be designed for our comforts? Because when we look at the story in Mark chapter 5, Jesus understands that we are in a battle and what we are doing is war. And he knew that his presence, him coming into this world, was an invasion of enemy territory. So when he takes on the demoniac, he fully understands all the dimensions that are at play in that encounter. So they cross the sea, the demoniac comes and meets Jesus, falls on his knees and says, "I know who you are, the Son of God, don't torment me." And very quickly there's a recognition of the quadruple uncleanliness of this guy. He's a Gentile, he lives in the tombs, that's unclean. He's among the pigs, that's unclean. And he's possessed by a demon. He's 4 times unclean. And he goes to Jesus and he seeks to be healed. And so I took a moment there and I said, hey, let's look at the backstory of how this even got here. And so we had to talk through some basic truths about the spiritual world. A couple of those foundational truths are as follows. Number one, we know that there is a spiritual world and we are involved in it. So that's foundational truth number one. Number two, the basis of our understanding and involvement in that spiritual world is biblical. The Bible tells us all about this. Number three, we're not on a winning team, we're on the team that wins. So in other words, we're not just doing a good job right now and winning, but no, Jesus ultimately is victorious over the spiritual world. And then number four, the Bible tells us to stand firm, to press forward, to be unmovable in our battle against the spiritual nature. And so there's a couple of errors we need to avoid. Error number one is denial, denying that there's a spiritual world, that it's all hocus pocus, that nothing is spiritual out there, that the only thing that exists is what's seen and tangible and real. That's an error we should avoid. And the second side of it is over-spiritualization. That's an error we should avoid. There's not a demon in behind every bush. If your toaster doesn't work, you don't need to cast a demon out of your toaster. That's not what we're going for. But we believe that Satan is real because Jesus believes Satan is real. And so from that, we took a moment to talk about Satan. Who is this demoniac possessed by? What's going on there? And so Satan is mentioned 29 times in the gospel. 25 of those are by Jesus. He's a created being who fell from heaven with 1/3 of the angels with him. You see that in Ezekiel 28 and Isaiah 14. And Satan now roams around as an angel who was created by God, who served God until he rebelled against God and now in every way opposes God. And in Luke chapter 10, Jesus says he was there when Satan fell. He saw the whole thing go down. And so Jesus still, in this moment, he reigns supreme over Satan. But there's 1/3 of the angels that are demonic and that they are able to influence us. A Christian cannot be possessed, but a Christian can be oppressed. The reason we can't be possessed is because the Holy Spirit resides inside of us. We're already possessed by the Holy Spirit. And so the way that Satan currently works in the world is through false teaching, heresy. He wants us to believe half-truths. He's the father of lies, so he's working through lies. And the second way is through sin. He ultimately wants us to sin. He wants the death of truth and the death of holiness. That's what Satan is doing. There's an ordinary nature to the demonic activity around us. It's not all just crazy. Okay, back to the story. So we have this guy, demoniac, with all that backstory, comes to Jesus and says, "I know who you are. You're the Son of God. Have you come here to torture me?" Jesus says, "What's your name?" He responds, "Legion," which in that world could mean between 2,000 and 6,000. It's a military term in the Roman world. So a lot. There's a lot of demons there. And what's fascinating is this man he's been restrained by chains. Nobody can hold him. He's cut himself, he's howling, he's isolated, he's in the tombs, he's among the pigs. He's absolute chaos. And Jesus gets off the boat, and this man does not think to himself with all these demons, I've been waiting for this moment. I can't wait to confront Jesus. There's 2,000 of us. There's one of him. We're going to take him on. He doesn't say that at all. And it's not like Jesus picked the wrong spot to get off the boat. No, the demoniac runs to Jesus, falls at his feet, and begs for mercy. And there's a connection back to the storm that Jesus just calmed. And this is what Mark is trying to teach us, that Jesus has authority over all of the forces of chaos. He is the authority over all the forces of chaos. And we must recognize that we do not have power to overcome evil on our own. We don't have power to overcome Satan on our own, but we serve one who has that power for us. And so what Jesus is showing here is that he is, again, he's the one that supersedes the natural world, the supernatural world, the physical world, that he is in fact the Son of God. And we are to believe in him and then find shelter in him from all of the spiritual darkness around us. And that's what the disciples see in this passage. So what do we do with that? Here's a few questions for you. Do you tend to overemphasize or underemphasize the spiritual world? Where do you land on that? Do you go too far, or do you not talk about it enough? What are some dangers in that? What are some dangers in thinking there is no spiritual world? And then what are some dangers in thinking everything's spiritual, there's a demon in every bush? When I listed those 4 foundational truths, which one of those do you feel like was most important for you? And then lastly, how can your community help combat the spiritual nature, the spiritual warfare that you're experiencing in your life? How can you invite other people to pray with you and to walk with you, and you can confess sin, and you can have people say, hey, I think you're believing a half-truth, or hey, I think you're believing a lie there. What are some ways that your Connect group can help you engage the darkness around you? And then, just as a final question, what do you think the church is? Do you think it's a luxury liner, or do you think it's a battleship? Like, who are we supposed to be? Because how you view the church is gonna change how you think about your role in the church. So talk about that with your Connect groups, and by God's grace, hopefully we'll learn together and have a great time of discussing His Word. We love you, Grace Church. I'll see you on Sunday.